Welcome back to Fire Emblem 4, and now it's time to finish off Chapter 6. And I thought that since now you're allowed to upload videos over 15 minutes, I may as well put all the rest of the chapter in one part. There wouldn't be much point splitting this into two videos. It's not really all that eventful enough. Because, as I said, the rest of this chapter is a complete joke. Probably a good thing, considering how much time I had with Schmitz. Fee's actually been getting some pretty good level ups, but... Anyway, right now I'm attacking this guy who doesn't actually qualify as a boss. Of course, if you manage to recruit Johann rather than Johalva, then this castle will be allied. But if you do, actually, I would recommend deliberately letting the enemy retake it. That seems like quite a weird thing to say, but it will make sense, because there's a certain event that happens after you capture this castle. It looks like, finally we've had an NPC who's actually survived. And I'm pretty sure this guy's actually going to survive for the whole chapter, so that's kind of a first for NPCs in this game, really. Shame you actually don't get anything out of it. I mean, later games in the series would give you items if you had NPCs survive the chapter, but... And as you can see, I'm already starting to prepare for the second-gen pairings that I'm doing, but mostly they're just the standard ones that are the most hinted at, but... In fact, I just actually realised that in the second generation, there's literally no point in... Well, I suppose there is the Lover critical bonus, but other than that, there's literally no point in making any pairings that aren't the predestined ones. There are quite a few predestined pairings. What I mean by that is the ones that get conversations in the final chapter. And somewhat disturbingly, most if not all of the possible cousin pairings do get conversations. But you won't be seeing any of that in this playthrough. Thankfully. I did hear of one guy on a forum who did, as a joke, an incest playthrough. But, yeah. And just speaking of pairings, Latch and whichever of the Axe brothers you went with start with quite a large amount of love points towards each other. In fact, something you should know is there are very few pairings in the second generation that actually have an actual starting love points or have lover event conversations. In other words, the majority of characters in the second generation start with 0 with everyone and don't get conversations with them. There are only very few who do. And as I said, most of them are hinted at by the story. But anyway, I think it's time to capture this castle, and probably I should start explaining this now. Depending on whether you had to conquer Isaac or Safaha, basically, Julia will get given an item. And the item she gets depends on which of the castles you captured. Of course, that also is indirectly influenced by which of the Axe brothers you decided to recruit. But in this case, though, as I have been trying to explain, it's not really all that much of a choice. There's one option that is by far superior. And it's this one, the one for conquering Isaac. Now, there's just a bit of a walk to the next castle, but thankfully no enemies. Which is really strange now that I think about it. Maybe they just wanted to give the player more opportunity to get used to the second generation characters and level them up, rather than throwing anything actually difficult at them. Right, here's the event. Yes, because of course, as seen in Chapter 5, Celeste grew up in Isaac. And the grandfather mentioned there is, of course, Vylon. Who sadly died, possibly without even knowing he had a grandson. Well, it'll probably be a while yet before we get to Bahara. See, as you can see there, Yuria will talk to Celeste. And I believe it works like this. At the time you initiate the conversation, whichever was the last castle you captured will determine the item she gets, and... Right, you'll see it here. Yes, the music playing here is Julia's theme. She gets her own theme, yeah. And yes, as you can see, you get the, well, I prefer to call it Rezaya, or Nosferatu as it's called in the English version games, but I won't get into all the fan controversy surrounding that. I really don't think it's all that bad. It was just a mistake on part of the developers who didn't realise it was originally a light spell. But anyway, if Isaac was the last castle you captured, you'll get the Rezaya spell. If Safaha was the last one, you'll instead get Aura. Now, like I've been hinting at, this really isn't much of a choice. Rezaya is far superior to Aura. Just in a really, really big way. And in fact, it is one of the main reasons why Julia is so much better than Deidre ever was. Because really, Aura pretty much sucks in this game. It's just absurdly heavy, and that really doesn't weigh out any of the advantages of the power boost. Because it's so heavy that it basically makes its wielder a death magnet. Whereas with Rezaya, Julia can actually... Well, in some cases, she can be next to invincible, provided you only let her get attacked during the enemy phase. Which means that she'll get damaged, then hopefully hit the enemy with Rezaya and recover all her health again, and the process repeats itself. Now, hopefully I'll get that working on this playthrough. On my very first playthrough, that's what happened with her a lot. Of course, you do want... Her growth isn't the best, but you do want her to gain speed at least a little bit. Because I'm pretty sure she does have pursuits. Like I said, though, she doesn't have the best speed growth, but if she gains a few points of speed here and there, it'll certainly help. Right, now we're almost in position. And there's one more village there. And now we're sending Oife to go to that village. I think I didn't actually realise when I did this chapter, but I eventually looked it up. There's actually a special event if you have Celeste visit a specific village in this chapter, which I'm pretty sure is that one I just sent Oife towards. It doesn't actually get you any items or anything, it just gets you a slightly different conversation. One where the village elder tries to force Celeste to marry his granddaughter. Which is kind of reminiscent of a village in one of Marth's games. I can't quite remember which one it was. I still don't even remember if it was in Shadow Dragon at all, I don't know, but I know it was certainly in the anime adaptation. To give Shida a typically painful response. But, right, enough just talking about random stuff. We're finally here. And right, there's Danon. And yes, he's a Baron. Well, 5 levels off max as well. And he's got some pretty decent stats, Major Nair Blood. So, you might be really intimidated by him at first glance. However, he has one very serious flaw that makes him absolutely pathetic and possibly one of the easiest bosses in the game. If you've been looking closely, you'll notice what it is. He has no ranged attack whatsoever. What this means is, you can just freely have characters like Arthur and Julia abuse on him for experience, and he can't do anything about it, at all. I think that may have been the village, I don't know. But first, I want to just have him attack Yohalva for a special conversation. I know it's a little cruel to force this guy to fight his dad, but you can actually quite clearly see the resemblance there in their portraits. Yes, thankfully, his two Damage Great Shields, his 2 sons didn't inherit the evil gene, like Danon did from his father. Anyway, that's probably enough for Yohalva. He doesn't really need experience because he starts off at a very high level compared to the rest of your party. From now on, the rest of this boss is just going to be fighting him with Arthur and Julia. Thankfully, 2 people who do need experience. Actually, they're both right at the bottom of my list in terms of levels, which is perfect. Though I do think we overestimated you in particular. See, like I've said, Arthur, much better than Azel. That's mainly due to the combination of Holy Bloods he has, which gives him some very good growth rates. And the fact that he can use wind from the start as opposed to crappy fire. I really don't know why fire magic sucks so much in this game. Because normally thunder is the one that's the heavy but powerful one, and fire is kind of in between. But in this game they decided to make them all identical, except for I actually cut a few turns there, because really, it was pretty boring. Yes, the world has become pretty dark since the end of the first generation. This probably isn't going to do all that much, but hopefully he'll miss. Ah, there's continue, which is activating quite a lot for her, for some reason. Right, now time for Julia to get some action. See, here you can see now, as a quite interesting thing about the Rezire animation, if you look at this closely, watch the animation here, it has a fairly unique quality. It's the time at which the enemy dodges it. It's kind of hard to explain this, but if you look closely there, you'll notice that the enemy dodges actually quite long before the animation finishes. So you'll know it's hit if the target just stands still. Otherwise, they'll dodge out of the way in the first few frames of the attack and just wait in the dodge position. Quite a weird quirk of this spell. See, as you'll see there, if the enemy just stands perfectly still, they've been hit. Hopefully... Yes, right. That's another hit. And he's down, finally. And with him down, we're one step closer to, yes, Alphys himself. Right, that is pretty much the end of this chapter. All I need to do is get Celise back to the castle, and there's really nothing more you can do here. It's actually a relatively short chapter, 6. It's kind of like a second prologue, obviously, because the first and second gen are... Well, they're the same game, but they kind of... It kind of feels like you're starting again. It's not really like Radiant Dawn's multiple part system, actually, because in that one, your character's still kind of... There was a big noticeable power difference in the characters you started off with in each part. But in this one, you're really back to square one. And yes, as you'll be seeing here, we don't get Oifei as our advisor for the second generation. We get someone much more awesome. Levin. Yes, Levin survived the first generation, and he's back as our advisor this time. And I mean, seriously, if you thought he was badass in the first generation, I mean, here he's pretty epic as well. Like, he virtually knows everything. And the music playing here is actually a variation on the opening theme. You know, the one just before the title screen. It's not quite the same. And yes, you'll hear about the child sacrifices here, which become a major theme in the second generation. Yes, the Lob Sect is not nice at all. Thankfully, we won't see the worst of it until later. An epic theme to introduce this. Celise's theme, which you heard before when you spoke with Oifei. I mean, kind of interesting. I mean, Celise is suddenly told he's some kind of chosen one. But he didn't really have a choice, because yes, he's technically the legitimate heir to the throne. By the way, that Prince Julius he mentioned, yeah, that's Alphys's other child. We'll find out just what sort of person he is in a few more chapters. Speaking of which, where exactly is the tear thing? Well, that's something we'll find out actually in quite a long time. And yes, there is a good reason why he didn't inherit it. Well, a reason other than the game would be totally broken if he did. Interesting enough, that quote actually kind of resonates with Levin a bit as well. You'll find out exactly more about what happened to Levin between the two generations later on, when we meet a certain other significant character. Alright, we're heading out to Quan's homeland. And it seems that, well, Quan came to help us in the final battle of the first generation. Looks like we're going to have to return the favour by helping out his son. Right, see you then.